Can I make something edible? And what does the receipt look like? Join me as we break down the ingredients and process of making German WW1 rusks. Today we are diving just a bit into the history of the rusks in the German army from 1860 up to the First World War. And I'm challenging myself to bake like a German army baker using WW1 Field Rusk receipts. Since we had a lot of theory last time, let's get back to some more experiments again. But first, some historical background. Let's dive in. Basically the rusk, or if we use the German word Zwieback, evolved from the French biscuit, which is a word put together from bis, which means 2 times, and quit, baked, as the German words Zwie or Zwei, which means 2, and Back, which means bake, which might have evolved throughout the 16th century. Of course, the rusks or hardtack were used as rations a lot in the several armies and navies with various receipts over time. From 1860 on, military bakers in all German garrison bakeries had to bake military rusks in the cooled ovens after they baked the bread to use the leftover heat from circa 160 degrees Celsius falling to around 130 degrees Celsius as war supplies, and in considerable quantities. Around 1890, the 2nd Kauka Army Corps set up an army rusk bakery in Vienna, opposite the largest military bakery in Europe at the time. At the Russo barracks, 2 Ortmann brick-field ovens were built on the ground floor of the provisions magazine and equipped with machines from the Heilfiger Bakery Machinery Factory, and 1892 rusk stampers. Rudder system. A daily production of 2 tons of rusks was achieved there. Not only in Austria, but in Germany there was a mechanization of the production of field rusks, which was urgently needed, because the numbers were large. Looking back at Germany, there were 21 army corps of the empire and 3 Bavarian, so in total 24. Each of it had roughly 50,000 men. So there were around 1.2 million men in the peacetime. For one option of the iron ration, which had about 250 grams of field rusks, around 300 tons were needed for them all. And, as we know, some formations had 2 portions and some 3. So something in between 600 tons to 900 tons of field rusks were needed. Then of course, the reserve formations and so on are not even considered here. Due to repeated suggestions, in 1886 a meat rusk was produced in military bakeries. It consisted of wheat flour, fresh beef, bacon fat and spices, i.e. a mixture with a short shelf life, the production of which was intended slowly for mobilization. Until 1894, nothing changed on the conventional field rusk, even though it was issued in cube form. In 1897 there was a test series of different rusks held from the medical department of the Royal Prussian Ministry of War. So it was an internal military trial, of which some were followed. In the first part there was some research made about bread. In the second part we find an intense research about the rusks, meaning on the one hand how the nutrition was, on the other hand the taste was tested. It was also compared how easy it was to eat the different rusks, how good they were to store, and if they got bad quickly, or if they were able to be stored for a while, if they were too hard to eat, if they were easy to eat, and if the taste was good, or if it was more like repulsive in taste, texture and so on. Some of the different rusks that were tested were the old military rusks, the new military rusks, English Albert biscuits, rusks with peanut groats, and army meat rusk, which was so difficult to eat and disgusting that the test could not be finished with that one, and many more different recipes from the military and from the private sector. Just have a look at the lists. It turned out that the new military rusk was the best. On the basis of these internal military trials, an improved field rusk was then introduced, which consisted of wheat and potato flour as well as sugar, which, like the meat rusk, was replaced in 1901 by a so-called egg rusk, which consisted of wheat and potato flour, sugar, eggs or dried egg yolk, and milk. This was, as was the introduction of tinned meat and vegetables in the 1901 War Catering Regulations, an expression and result of the growing importance of nutritional, physiological and technological knowledge within the military. So let's go for some baking now and try to bake the 1901 rusk. Now let us have a look about what we need. For about 2 portions or a bit more of German rusks, we need 500 grams of wheat flour, 45 grams of potato flour, 60 grams of sugar, 3 eggs, 8 grams of salt, 7.5 grams of yeast. For every 100 grams of made dough, about 10 grams of cooked rice. 100 ml milk or water or something similar. Put the wheat and potato flour, the sugar and salt all together. And afterwards give it a good mix. Then add the yeast by breaking it into smaller parts so it can spread better in the dough. Alright, now it is time to add the milk. And then stir it up. If you have a machine, go for it and use it. I myself do not have one, so the good old spoon will do. Afterwards, crack up the eggs and add them to the dough as well, and keep on mixing. Add the cooked rice at last and mix it in. The dough should not be too wet. If it is, just add some more flour to mop up the moisture. And then let the yeast do some of its magic, but not too long, just for a short while. When this is done, take out the dough and roll it out to a thickness of around 10 to 7 mm. Afterwards, cut the dough into pieces of either 1.5 times 3 cm or 2 times 4 cm. I tried to build some sort of cookie cutter, but it did not work out as planned, so I just used a knife and cut the dough roughly in these dimensions. I used a fork to put holes into the rusks, but you can take any pointy thing for it you like. The rusks go into the oven at 150 degrees Celsius. They are not allowed to go dark. They have to stay light. As soon as they get just a little bit brown on the outside, take them out and let them cool off. At this stage they are pretty fluffy and remember a bit of bread rolls in taste. Now we are at the last step. If you have a drying cabinet, put them in there at 50 degrees Celsius for a good while until they are dry. Otherwise, just use the oven again, just with 50 degrees Celsius.
Now we are at the conclusion and at the tasting. First of all, it was pretty easy to actually bake these rusks, right? And now for the tasting. Well, I got them in the hard way and I got them steamed as it is described in the manual. So let's go for the first steamed. Okay, yeah, it's pretty easy. It's sort of fluffy actually and a bit moist. And now let's go for the really dry one. Yeah, it's apparently very, very hard, as we can hear as well, I think. And it's not as dense as I would say, because I think the yeast made it a little bit fluffy. And they have actually no real specific taste. So Not really sugary, not really salty or something. But not bad, I would say. But not bad.
So, here we have it. One portion, meaning 250 grams of rusks, and a bag according to the regulations, in which they were put in. The bag was made of either cotton, linen, or anything that was at hand, in the dimensions 17 times 25 cm, and had strings of circa 20 cm with about 1 cm in diameter for closing. Of course, it was stamped as well. Here we have the 8th Hussars, 3rd Squadron, and the Bekleidungsamt 7 in 1914. To explain the stamps properly, it would be a video for itself. While packing in the rusks, you can just hear how dry they are.
Alright, if you have any additional informations or suggestions for some upcoming videos, just let me know in the comments below. So thank you all for watching, have a good one, and see you next time.